Have you ever wondered why some people remain calm even when facing crisis? Why are there individuals who go through failure, pressure, or loss, but still manage to stand up strong and keep moving forward as if nothing could bring them down? Meanwhile, many others are easily swept away by negative emotions, loss and adversity, and lose their sense of direction. The difference does not lie in their circumstances or starting point. It lies in how they think and in their ability to stay in control when life becomes challenging. One of the foundations that helps people build such inner strength is the philosophy of Stoicism. Stoicism is a school of philosophy that originated in ancient Greece more than 2,000 years ago. What makes it truly special is its enduring value over time. Even though the world has changed dramatically with technology, speed, and new forms of pressure, Stoicism remains a spiritual compass for those who seek to live with clarity, calm, and depth. From Roman emperors like Marcus Aurelius to modern entrepreneurs like Tim Ferriss and Jack Dorsey, many have applied Stoic principles in their lives to achieve real success, not just surface-level glamour. Stoic philosophy is not a lofty theory reserved for scholars. On the contrary, it is a practical tool for anyone dealing with stress, change, uncertainty, or challenge. Stoicism teaches us to recognize what is within our control and what we should let go of. It helps us master our emotions, act with reason, and live with discipline instead of being swept up in the chaos of the outside world. When applied, Stoicism does not make people cold or indifferent. It makes them composed, clear-headed, and intentional in their actions. In this article, we will explore 9 essential aspects of Stoic philosophy and understand why it has the power to shape a strong mindset for success. Whether you're starting a business, seeking balance in your personal life, or simply wanting to live with more depth and peace, Stoicism offers practical lessons with lasting impact. Now is the time to begin a journey of changing your mindset, starting from within. Chapter 1. What is Stoicism and why does it continue to endure through time? As modern life becomes more stressful and each passing day is filled with change, information, expectations, and disappointments, many of us ask ourselves how we can remain calm, clear-minded, and resilient in such a chaotic world. There is an answer that has existed for more than 2,000 years and still holds timeless relevance today. That answer is the philosophy of Stoicism. Stoicism is an ancient school of philosophy that emerged around the early 3rd century BC in the city of Athens, Greece. Its founder was Zeno of Citium, a Phoenician merchant who lost everything in a shipwreck. When he drifted ashore in Athens and began reading philosophical texts, he felt as though he had found a new meaning in life. From that moment, he began teaching his philosophy in a public space called the Stoa Poikile, a painted porch. The name Stoicism originates from this humble place, not from an academic institution or religious setting, which aligns perfectly with the practical and grounded nature of the philosophy itself. What makes Stoicism unique is the way it blends philosophical depth with practical application. It is not merely an abstract theory reserved for scholars. It is a way of life, a method of training the inner self, shaping thought, managing behavior, and facing adversity with steadiness. A Stoic does not seek to avoid pain or difficulty. Instead, they learn to confront it directly, accept it as an inevitable part of life, and use it as material for growth. One of the central principles of Stoicism is learning to clearly distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. According to Stoic thinkers like Epictetus, we cannot control the world, the weather, the emotions of others, or the final outcomes of our efforts. However, we can fully control how we think, how we respond, and how we act. This is not just a philosophical concept. It is a foundation of a strong and steady mindset that is essential in today's fast-changing and unpredictable world. The philosophy of Stoicism was developed and passed down through generations by 3 of its most influential figures: Seneca, a Roman statesman and writer; Epictetus, a former slave who became a respected philosopher; and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who wrote his philosophical reflections in the now classic work Meditations. Though they came from vastly different backgrounds, all 3 lived through times of great instability and uncertainty. Yet each demonstrated clarity, resilience, and resolve through their commitment to Stoic principles. It is no coincidence that Stoicism is experiencing a strong revival in the 21st century. In an era where people are stretched between societal expectations and personal anxieties, between social media and loneliness, between technological speed and spiritual disorientation, Stoicism offers a still and steady breeze amid the storm. It does not promise instant wealth, fame, or constant happiness. Instead, it teaches us to live with depth, to understand what is enough, to accept what cannot be changed, and to focus all our energy on what we can control. Today, many successful individuals turn to Stoicism as a way to stay grounded in the midst of chaos. Best-selling author Tim Ferriss has said that he begins each morning by reading a short passage from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Renowned investor Nassim Taleb regards Epictetus as a spiritual guide. Ryan Holiday, a key figure in the modern Stoic movement, has written several bestsellers that have brought this philosophy closer to young professionals and modern thinkers. Interestingly, the busier people get, the more they turn to Stoicism to rediscover clarity and balance. Stoicism does not require you to live like a monk or renounce the modern world. It does not reject material success, but rather emphasizes that true success is mastering oneself. A Stoic can be a business person, a leader, an athlete, an artist, or anyone living in a noisy world who manages to maintain a clear mind, a sense of self-control, and a purposeful way of life. If you look closely, you will see that Stoicism is far from outdated. On the contrary, it is surprisingly modern. When you learn to let go of what you cannot control, you will worry less. When you accept reality instead of complaining, you will have more energy to take action. And when you know what truly matters, you will no longer be distracted by meaningless things. These values are exactly what have allowed Stoicism to stand the test of time. No longer a philosophy for Roman emperors or ancient thinkers, Stoicism has become an inner compass for anyone seeking strength, resilience, and a deeper way of living. Chapter 2. The Control Mindset, the first foundation of success. In every life situation, whether in work, relationships, or personal development, there's one question that Stoic philosophy always places at the forefront. Is this within my control? It is simple, but if you truly live by this question every day, it will completely transform how you see the world, how you face difficulties, and how you make decisions. The first principle of Stoicism is learning to distinguish between two types of things: what you can control and what you cannot. Among the things you can control are your thoughts, actions, reactions, values, choices, and how you perceive situations. On the other hand, you cannot control factors such as the weather, the words of others, popularity, the final outcome of an effort, or health conditions that occur naturally. Philosopher Epictetus put it plainly: your happiness depends on what you can control, not on what you cannot. Sadly, most of us spend the majority of our time and energy on things outside of our control. We worry about what others think, about the result of an interview, about unexpected events. Meanwhile, what we can change is how we prepare, how we respond, and the mindset we bring to the journey. When we focus entirely on what we can control, we become more proactive, resilient, and at peace. When we obsess over things we cannot control, we fall into passivity, anxiety, and exhaustion. Take, for example, preparing for an important presentation. You cannot fully control the audience's reaction, technical issues, or someone's fleeting emotions. But you can control your level of preparation, your delivery, the calmness in your voice, and the confidence in your gaze. If you spend your energy fearing others' opinions, you give away your inner strength. If you focus on doing your best with what is in your power, you not only perform well, but also maintain your peace of mind, regardless of the result. Stoics cultivate the control mindset by constantly asking themselves, does this belong to me? If the answer is yes, they commit fully. If not, they let go without regret. This does not mean being indifferent or irresponsible. On the contrary, it requires a high level of awareness. You must have enough clarity to distinguish between what is truly your responsibility and what burdens you're carrying unnecessarily. In the age of social media, the control mindset becomes even more essential. We are easily drawn into the whirlwind of comparison, expectations, and external validation. How many of us judge our self-worth based on likes, shares, or the gaze of others? When we do that, we hand over control of our happiness to things that are inherently unstable. The Stoic returns to themselves and asks, am I living according to my values? Am I acting with integrity? These questions help us stay anchored and not be swept away by surface-level distractions. A classic example is that of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who led a vast empire while regularly writing personal reflections on how to remain humble, calm, and principled. In times of war, plague, and rebellion, he still took the time to write in his journal to remind himself of what truly lay within his control: his mind, his reactions, his character. That was how he preserved his qualities as a leader through countless trials. In personal life, the control mindset helps us face difficult periods with greater strength. When losing a job, instead of drowning in feelings of failure or blaming society, a Stoic turns inward and asks what they can do next. When misunderstood, they do not react impulsively, but instead aim to regulate their emotions, reflect on themselves, and respond in a way that aligns with their values. It all begins with choice to focus on what can be controlled. None of us can avoid failure, loss, or hardship, but how we face those things is entirely in our hands. This is why the control mindset is not just a philosophical idea, but a vital life skill. It helps us stand firm in our careers, stay grounded in relationships, and move forward with confidence, even when no one can guarantee the outcome. And if you are looking to begin practicing Stoicism, the control mindset is the perfect place to start. Starting today, observe what makes you anxious or frustrated. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it is, take action. If it is not, let it go and shift your attention to what you can change. Day by day, this practice will help you build calm, strength, and inner resilience that nothing can shake. Chapter 3. Mastering Emotions, the silent weapon of successful people. None of us can live a life without experiencing anger, sadness, disappointment, or fear. Emotions are a natural and essential part of the human experience. However, what Stoic philosophy emphasizes is not the suppression of emotions, but the ability to observe, master, and guide them with awareness. This is one of the key skills for building long-term, sustainable success. A successful person is not someone who never feels emotion. They are someone who can master their emotions in the most challenging situations. Stoicism refers to the state as apatheia, not in the sense of coldness or numbness, but as an inner balance. A Stoic fully experiences emotions, but they do not let those emotions control their actions, thinking, or values. They do not let anger pull them into cycles of resentment, sadness lead them to surrender, or excitement blind them to risk. The philosopher Epictetus once said that we are not harmed by what happens to us, but by how we interpret and respond to it. This idea is powerful because it places the strength entirely in our hands. An objective event like losing a contract or being criticized does not inherently cause pain. It is the way we view that event that determines the emotion we experience. If we see it as a failure, an insult, or a threat, then pain arises. But if we see it as a chance to learn or to develop patience, then the negative emotions fade. In practice, mastering emotions is essential for good leadership, strong relationships, and consistent performance. A leader who is easily swayed by emotion tends to make hasty, impulsive, and inconsistent decisions. In contrast, someone who can observe their emotions as an outsider has the ability to respond with clarity, calm, and strategy. They are not controlled by the situation, but become the one who guides it. Imagine you are in a tense meeting, and a colleague openly criticizes your idea. Your instinctive reaction might be anger, defensiveness, or even silent withdrawal. But a Stoic would pause, breathe, acknowledge the anger, and ask themselves, what response aligns with my values? Can I learn something from this criticism? And if not, can I maintain my dignity and continue the conversation constructively? That small pause is where true power lies. Interestingly, Stoics do not reject positive emotions like joy, excitement, or love. They welcome them, but do not cling to them. They understand that all emotions are temporary. To attach your sense of self-worth to fleeting moments of happiness can be just as dangerous as being overwhelmed by negative emotions. Instead, they train for inner stability, a state that does not depend on external circumstances. A powerful example of this is Marcus Aurelius himself. During his reign, he faced numerous personal tragedies, the loss of loved ones, prolonged wars, uprisings, and plagues spreading across the empire. But rather than collapse, he wrote reflections on patience, forgiveness, and compassion. The words he penned in solitude, pain, and intense pressure have become priceless spiritual treasures for humanity. And that could only come from someone with deep emotional mastery. In the modern world, where information is overwhelming, arguments erupt over a single post, and people overreact to the slightest triggers, emotional mastery becomes even more valuable. It is the invisible armor that protects you from unnecessary energy loss. It is the lighthouse that helps you steer through storms. And most of all, it is the first step toward acting with reason instead of impulse. One simple yet effective way to practice this skill is to keep a daily emotion journal. It does not have to be long. Just answer a few questions like, what did I feel today? Why did I react that way? Was that reaction in line with my values? What could I do differently if it happened again? Over time, you will find that you are no longer swept away by emotion, but able to observe and direct it like a conductor guiding an orchestra. In short, mastering emotions does not mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means mastering yourself. It means you are not carried away by the waves, but know how to steer your own course. This is a vital quality if you want to be strong, resilient, and sustainably successful. And Stoicism is one of the most effective tools to cultivate it. Chapter 4, Cultivating Virtue. Success is not just the outcome, but also the person you become. In modern society, many people define success through specific indicators such as wealth, fame, job titles, or the number of followers on social media. However, when we look deeper, we realize that these things, no matter how glamorous, can collapse after just one crisis, one ethical lapse, or one unexpected scandal. That is why, to a Stoic, true success cannot be separated from virtue. It is the kind of success that comes from within. It is the victory over oneself. It is living in alignment with values you never betray. Stoicism places virtue as the ultimate goal. In the view of Stoic philosophers, everything else such as money, health, social status, and even reputation is considered an external advantage. These are things that may or may not be present, but they do not determine a person's true worth. Only virtue, living rightly, wisely, and rationally, is fully within your control and worth pursuing for a lifetime. The 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism are wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. These are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are practical and actionable principles for everyday life. Whenever you face a choice, a challenge, or a temptation, you can return to these 4 standards and ask yourself, is what I am about to do wise? Do I have the courage to act rightly even if no one supports me? Am I exercising self-control and mastering my impulses? Is my action fair and not causing harm to others? Take, for example, the situation where you are leading a startup. A business partner proposes a quick deal with high profits, but you know it lacks transparency. If you focus only on short-term gain, you might accept it. But if virtue is your foundation, you will reject the deal even though it may slow your company's progress. In doing so, you are choosing to be someone who lives rightly instead of someone who merely wins in the short term. That is what allows you to hold your head high, sleep peacefully at night, and build long-term trust with your team, your customers, and yourself. Marcus Aurelius, even as the emperor of the Roman Empire, never stopped reminding himself that power is merely a tool to serve justice. In his personal writings, he would often ask himself, am I acting fairly? Am I being swayed by emotion? Does this decision serve the common good? Even at the height of power, he never saw himself as above others. He always lived with the spirit of service, which came from continuous moral cultivation. In today's work environment, developing virtue is a timeless competitive advantage. A person with sharp intellect, but without fairness, will soon lose the trust of their team. Someone with passion but lacking temperance may act impulsively and ruin progress. A smart person without courage cannot lead others through difficulty. But a person who embodies all 4 virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, is someone who earns trust, respect, and lasting companionship. The truth is that virtue does not come naturally. It is something cultivated through daily practice. Just like physical training, you cannot work out once and expect a perfect body. Likewise, you cannot behave ethically once and expect to become a virtuous person. Stoicism teaches that every moment in life is an opportunity to strengthen your character. When someone gets angry with you, that is your chance to practice temperance. When faced with a difficult decision, it is your chance to develop wisdom. When you must choose between right and wrong, even if wrong is easier, choosing what is right is a chance to build courage. And when choosing between personal gain and the greater good, your fairness becomes a living proof of your virtue. Virtue also becomes your anchor when you fail. If you have acted rightly, stayed honest, and given your full effort, yet still do not achieve the desired result, you can still hold your head high and feel at peace. You have not betrayed your values. In that case, success is no longer tied to external outcomes. It becomes an inner sense of peace. This mindset protects you from being crushed by temporary setbacks. You know you are becoming a better person every day. Stoicism emphasizes that a virtuous person does not need external recognition to feel fulfilled. They do not seek praise because their greatest reward is inner stability. They feel self-respect and integrity. They are not swayed by public opinion. They are not shaken by flattery or criticism. They know who they are, why they act the way they do, and what truly matters. On the journey to success, perhaps this is the most important lesson. Become a good person before you strive to become a successful one. If you reach success without a foundation of virtue, that success could become a trap that causes you to lose yourself. But if you cultivate virtue every day, no matter how difficult the path, you are always a winner, not in the eyes of others, but in the depths of your own heart. Chapter 5, Adversity Mindset. Turning pain into opportunity, failure into strength. No one is immune to adversity. No matter how smart you are, how thorough your plans may be, or how much effort you put in, there will always be things in life that are beyond your control. You may lose a job you thought was secure. A trusted friend might betray you. A highly anticipated project could fail disastrously. The important question is not whether you will face difficulty, but how you will respond when it comes. This is where Stoic thinking shines. Stoicism doesn't promise to shield you from suffering. It offers philosophy to face it, transform it, and grow from it. To a Stoic, adversity is not an obstacle. It is raw material. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, once wrote that fire tests gold and hardship tests character. But he went even further by saying that a wise person is like a fire. Whatever is thrown into it only fuels it to burn brighter. This is not just motivational talk. It is a truth you can verify through your own life experiences. Think back to the last time you faced a major setback. You may have felt hopeless, lost, or even ready to give up. But now, looking back, perhaps you realize that challenge made you stronger. Perhaps it taught you a costly but important lesson. Maybe it opened a new path, one that is deeper and more resilient. That is the spirit of Stoicism. Don't wish for life to be easier. Wish to become stronger each day. The Stoic philosophy trains us to develop a mindset called amor fati, the love of fate. This is not passive acceptance. It is the active embrace of everything that happens, including suffering, as a necessary part of growth. A Stoic does not curse life when failure strikes. They don't ask, why me? They ask, what is this trying to teach me? It is a shift from being a victim to becoming the master of one's response. A powerful example is Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years, he had every reason to hate, to collapse, to abandon his ideals. But instead, he used that time to cultivate his intellect, inner strength, and compassion. When he was finally released, he was not just a survivor. He was a symbol of national reconciliation. Though not a formal Stoic, his mindset embodied its essence, transforming adversity into the foundation of his character. In business, you'll notice that the most sustainably successful people tend to have one thing in common: high resilience. They don't fear failure because they don't see it as the end. They see it as feedback, as data, as a lesson. When Thomas Edison was asked about his thousands of failed attempts before inventing the light bulb, he replied that he had not failed. He had simply found thousands of ways that didn't work. That mindset kept him from giving up and ultimately led to one of the world's most transformative inventions. Stoicism teaches that nothing can harm you unless you allow it to. This doesn't deny the reality of pain. Stoics do not avoid reality, but they make a clear distinction between what happens and how we respond to it. A career failure is just an event. Whether you interpret it as proof of your worthlessness or as a prompt to try a new approach is entirely up to you. That is true power, the ability to choose the meaning of your experiences. One very practical Stoic exercise is negative visualization. Each day, spend a few minutes imagining the worst-case scenarios: losing your job, being rejected, being misunderstood, failing in a major project, even losing a loved one. Not to become pessimistic, but to prepare your mind and to appreciate the present more deeply. When you've already considered the worst, you are no longer paralyzed by fear or caught off guard. You act with clarity and composure. Moreover, Stoics do not tie their self-worth to success or failure. They understand that outcomes come after actions. The only thing fully within your control is your conduct, your attitude, and your effort. Results are influenced by countless other factors: the market, the weather, luck. So failure does not make you a failure. It is a moment, not your identity. What matters is what you learn and how you respond. The Stoic adversity mindset is like strength training. The heavier the weights, the stronger you become. The more challenges you face, the tougher you grow. It's no coincidence that those who live by Stoic principles often carry a deep gaze, speak with calm voices, and radiate a grounded, unshakable presence. They don't seek an easy life. They build inner strength to face whatever comes. And that is the greatest gift of Stoicism. It doesn't promise to spare you from pain. It helps you become the kind of person who can look at pain, smile, and keep walking. When you master your mindset in adversity, you stop fearing failure. And when you no longer fear failure, you act with boldness, confidence, and resilience. That is a foundation of every lasting and meaningful success. Chapter 6. Focus on what you can control. The ultimate secret to freedom and effectiveness. Among all the core teachings of Stoicism, perhaps none is more important and practical than the clear distinction between what you can control and what you cannot. This mindset, though simple on the surface, is one of the most profound foundations for achieving inner freedom, maximum effectiveness, and lasting success. When you direct all your energy toward what is within your power, you stop being scattered. You stop being stressed by external factors beyond your will. And when your mind is clear, focused, and undisturbed, your performance, confidence, and sense of agency rise dramatically. Let's begin with a very common example. Imagine you're preparing for an important presentation. You practice thoroughly, organize your content clearly, and even anticipate possible questions. These are things you can control. But on the day itself, the projector malfunctions. A few attendees arrive late and create noise. Some people don't seem interested. These are factors beyond your control. If you let them bother you, you might lose your composure, underperform, or misjudge your own efforts. The Stoics teach us this essential truth. You cannot choose what happens, but you can always choose how to respond. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, emphasized that it's not events that upset you, but your judgments about them. Once you internalize this mindset, you stop complaining, blaming, or feeling powerless. You raise your head, focus on doing your part well, and accept the outcome with calm. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or passive about life. On the contrary, it helps you act more effectively because you're no longer distracted by what lies beyond your reach. If it starts to rain while you're waiting for the bus, you pull out a notebook and jot down thoughts. If you're rejected from a job, you analyze the reasons and improve. If a client cancels a contract last minute, you don't sink into frustration. You pivot toward finding a new opportunity. You stay proactive because your behavior, your attitude, and your choices are always within your grasp. One of the most vivid examples of this principle is Marcus Aurelius. As Roman emperor, he ruled a vast empire while facing constant wars, plagues, and rebellions. Despite holding immense power, he understood he couldn't control people's minds, the weather, or political chaos. All he could control was himself. He worked with integrity, practiced justice, showed compassion, and wrote in his journal every night to reflect. In Meditations, he wrote, "My task is not to make everything happen as I wish, but to behave in a way that befits a rational, responsible, and decent human being." In today's volatile world, where you're bombarded with news, social expectations, online comparisons, and countless uncontrollable events, Knowing where your control lies becomes a spiritual compass. It frees you from overwhelm. It reduces anxiety and envy. It brings real focus to your work. Try this exercise. Create 2 columns. On one side, list what you can control, your effort, how you use your time, the attitude you adopt, the feedback you give. On the other side, list what you cannot control, what others think of you, market fluctuations, who likes or dislikes you, the final outcome. Whenever you feel stressed, look at that list. If the concern belongs to the uncontrollable column, let it go. If it belongs to the controllable side, take action. This is the ultimate principle that frees you from invisible and irrational pressure. You no longer get stuck in cycles of frustration over things outside your reach. You stop chasing impossible perfection. You return to what truly matters, doing your part every day with intention and consistency. This mindset also reshapes how you define success. Stoics don't measure success by outcomes. They measure it by right effort and inner integrity. If you prepared thoroughly, worked diligently, and treated others with kindness, then even if the project fails, you can still hold your head high. You're no longer dependent on external validation. You live by your inner standard, and that is the essence of freedom. On a practical level, this brings you a significant advantage in performance. People who focus on the right things are less distracted, manage their emotions better, and make faster decisions. Instead of complaining about circumstances, they act. Instead of waiting for inspiration, they build discipline. Instead of obsessing over results, they refine their process. And because of that, they often achieve better outcomes, while living with more calm and strength. Put simply, when you stop trying to control what you cannot, you free up energy to better control what you can. And that is a sustainable formula for success. Not a fragile success built on luck, but a deep and steady success rooted in solid internal ground. Chapter 7. Awareness and Self-Inquiry. Training the mind like a stoic warrior. In a noisy and distracted world, perhaps the rarest luxury for the modern human is the ability to be truly aware. This awareness is not merely a physical state, but a mental one. The ability to observe oneself objectively, without judgment but with full responsibility. A person who lives by Stoic principles is not driven by fleeting emotions or external circumstances. They choose to live with intention, grounded in inner strength, and continuously reflect inward to understand themselves more deeply each day. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that our life is shaped by the thoughts we cultivate. And to master those thoughts, the Stoic relies on a key practice, self-inquiry. Every day, they set aside time to examine their actions, from the smallest words spoken to how they reacted under pressure, and even the emotions they experienced in each moment. This process helps them realign their thoughts and behaviors with reason and their core values. One of the most effective ways to practice self-inquiry is through daily journaling. Marcus Aurelius himself is a prime example. He spent time each evening writing down his reflections, doubts, mistakes, and lessons learned from everyday life. These writings later became the timeless classic Meditations, a foundational text of Stoic thought. What's notable is that he never wrote for an audience. He wrote solely for himself. This reveals an essential truth. The purpose of writing is not to show off one's intellect, but to engage in an honest conversation with oneself. Today, none of us are Roman emperors, but every one of us can adopt the same practice. Each night before sleep, you only need a few minutes to jot down what you did that day, situations that triggered strong emotions, and how you responded. Note what you were proud of and what left you uneasy. These simple lines become a mirror, reflecting your mind back to you, helping you see your strengths, weaknesses, and the direction you are choosing in life. Beyond writing, the Stoic also practices mindful awareness in everyday activities. When eating, they focus on eating. When listening, they listen fully. When working, they give complete attention and responsibility to the task at hand. They don't let their minds drift toward future worries or past regrets. They understand that real life happens only in the present, and only by fully inhabiting the present can we live meaningfully. Another important aspect of Stoic practice is the ability to maintain distance from emotions. Stoics do not suppress emotions, but neither do they allow emotions to control them. When anger arises, they acknowledge its presence but don't let it dictate their actions. When hurt, they observe the pain as a natural phenomenon, not resisting it, but also not prolonging it unnecessarily. This is the key difference between someone who masters themselves and someone mastered by circumstance. Awareness and self-inquiry not only help regulate behavior, but also open the door to self-understanding. When you know yourself, you discover what you truly want, what values matter most, what brings you genuine happiness, and what leads you astray. With that understanding, you begin to make better decisions, ones rooted in meaning rather than in society's noisy definitions of success, like money or fame. And in knowing yourself, you begin to understand others. When you realize that you felt anger, envy, and weakness, you're more inclined to empathize with others. A Stoic doesn't look down on people for their flaws, because they know everyone is fighting their own private battles. This deep empathy allows them to build relationships based on respect and sincerity, rather than comparison or judgment. In essence, awareness and self-inquiry are not occasional practices. They are serious, daily training for the mind. They don't happen overnight, but are the result of consistent observation, even in the smallest actions. And over time, something profound begins to unfold. The realization that no one else can take charge of your life except you. And to take charge of your life, you must first take charge of yourself. In Stoic thought, there is no greater victory than overcoming yourself. No matter how chaotic the world becomes, the mindful person remains inwardly calm. No matter the failure or criticism, they stay rooted in self-worth. No matter how unpredictable life may be, they know there's one place that remains stable and trustworthy, the inner fortress of a well-trained mind. In the end, awareness and self-inquiry are two pillars essential for building a mindset of lasting success. True strength doesn't come from talking more, acting faster, or always staying upbeat. Real resilience comes from the quiet ability to observe yourself, understand yourself, and act with purpose. That is the silent but steady strength of a Stoic warrior in the midst of a restless world. Chapter 8. Self-Discipline. The power of what no one sees. If there is one trait that clearly separates those who achieve lasting success from those who shine briefly and fade away, it is discipline. Not talent, not luck, not favorable conditions, but consistent commitment to small daily actions that silently build extraordinary individuals over time. For those who live by Stoic philosophy, discipline is not just a habit. It is an expression of reason, dignity, and self-respect. Stoic self-discipline is not about rigid self-denial or punishing oneself. It is not about living an ascetic life to prove something to others. On the contrary, discipline is a conscious choice to act in alignment with what truly matters, even when the task is difficult, boring, or invisible to others. The Stoic understands that true value does not lie in appearances, but in small, consistent, and repeated actions performed quietly in the dark. One of the most powerful examples is Epictetus, born into slavery. He trained his mind and cultivated unshakable discipline to become one of the most influential Stoic philosophers. He lived simply, ate with moderation, and maintained daily habits of study and reflection. This internal order allowed him to develop deep wisdom and inspire thousands, including the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. In modern life, self-discipline reveals itself through everyday decisions: waking up on time, exercising regularly, working with focus, avoiding procrastination, saying no to short-term temptations in favor of long-term values. These actions may seem small, but they are difficult to sustain without a strong inner foundation. And this is exactly where Stoicism becomes a powerful guide. Rather than relying on fleeting motivation or external pressure, the Stoic relies on reason and will. The Stoic sets clear principles for how to live. They know what is important and commit to it. They don't wait for inspiration to act. They act because they have already chosen this path. They understand that emotions are temporary, but outcomes come from consistency. They also know that personal growth does not come from one big moment, but from thousands of small decisions, most of which no one else sees. Discipline is also a form of freedom. This may sound like a paradox, but those without discipline are easily controlled by emotions, temptations, and circumstances. A truly disciplined person is one who rules over themselves. When you can reject the easier path in order to pursue the harder but more meaningful one, you are living freely in the truest sense. The Stoic is not a slave to bad habits, laziness, or emotional impulse. They do not allow circumstances to define who they are. Instead, they act with intention to shape their own reality, to develop discipline. Stoics often begin with the simplest things: tidying their workspace daily, writing in a journal at a fixed time, exercising even for just 10 minutes, turning off the phone in the evening to avoid distraction. These actions not only build skill, but also train willpower. Over time, that willpower becomes a core part of their character. It allows them to stay on course even when motivation fades. It keeps them moving forward when others give up. Importantly, the Stoic is not harsh on themselves when they fail. They understand that everyone stumbles. What matters is not letting failure define you. They face their shortcomings honestly, learn from the experience, and get back up. For the Stoic, discipline is not perfectionism. It is a continuous commitment to live by one's values, even when execution is imperfect. Another deep benefit of self-discipline is the development of internal trust. When you promise yourself something and follow through, you begin to trust yourself. Conversely, when you repeatedly break promises to yourself, you erode that trust. The Stoic doesn't need a supervisor to stay on track. They act out of integrity. That internal trust becomes their anchor during hard times and their compass when facing tough decisions. Discipline also lays the groundwork for creativity and freedom of thought. When your mind is organized and your habits are aligned, you create space for deep thinking and innovation. On the other hand, if you live chaotically and without discipline, even your best ideas are unlikely to take shape. The Stoic doesn't wait for inspiration or luck. They create a supportive environment for their mind to flourish by first mastering themselves. Ultimately, self-discipline is a lifelong journey. It does not offer instant rewards, but it brings tremendous results over the long term. It does not make noise, but it silently underpins all true achievement. The Stoic understands that if you cannot control yourself, you cannot control anything else. That is why they choose a harder but wiser path, and they walk it with patience, perseverance, and integrity. Chapter 9, Stoic Thinking in Action, Living with Reason in an Emotional World. Throughout this journey into Stoic philosophy, we have explored foundational ideas, tools for training the mind, and the disciplines of self-awareness and self-control. But none of it means anything if it stays on the page or in our heads. Philosophy without action is hollow. Stoicism, while a robust system of thought, is ultimately a way of living. The Stoic does not hide in books. They live in the real world, full of pressure, noise, conflict, and emotion. And it is precisely in this turbulent world that their character is revealed. To think stoically in action means to live with intention. It means that before making a decision, you ask yourself, does this align with the values I've chosen to live by? Does it serve my long-term purpose? Does it reflect the kind of person I am striving to become? The Stoic does not act to please others, nor do they follow impulses or fleeting trends. They consider carefully and then commit fully, regardless of the outcome. This mindset is most clearly tested in adversity. It is easy to appear calm and composed when things are going well. But when you are betrayed, misunderstood, lose a loved one, or watch your plan collapse, that is when Stoic strength truly surfaces. Instead of shouting or blaming, the Stoic pauses to observe the emotions rising within. They allow themselves to feel pain, but they do not let it consume reason. They ask the critical question, what is within my control? And then they focus all their energy on that. Reason is the Stoic's sharpest weapon. In every situation, they strive to let reason guide them, no matter how intense the emotion. They do not deny feelings, but they do not let feelings drive behavior. When anger flares, they remain silent and step back. When fear arises, they analyze its source. When disappointment hits, they acknowledge it but do not linger. They understand that emotions are natural responses, but actions are conscious choices, and they always choose to act based on principles, not passing emotions. In their work, the Stoic focuses more on the process than the outcome. They set clear goals, plan thoughtfully, and give their full effort, yet they remain detached from results. They understand that outcomes depend on many factors, and not all are within their control. So they do not cling to expectations. They do their best and release the rest. This mindset allows them to maintain inner stability even in high-pressure, competitive environments. In relationships, Stoic thinking means not trying to control others, but choosing how to respond. Others may be angry, unfair, selfish, or rude, but that does not mean we must respond with the same energy. We can choose to remain silent, to forgive, to step away, or to speak up, so long as our choice reflects clarity and dignity. The Stoic does not seek to fix others. They seek to master themselves. One of the most powerful traits of the Stoic is acting without seeking recognition. They do not need applause to keep doing what is right. They are not manipulated by praise or criticism. They know the value of their actions, regardless of who notices. This independence gives them rare strength in a world driven by comparison and validation. They do not need to prove anything to anyone. They only need to remain true to their conscience and reason. Stoic thinking and action builds an immense inner power. When you know that no matter what happens, you can remain calm, choose a responsible response, and continue acting for the good, you no longer fear life. You become like a tree with deep roots in the midst of a storm. Life may throw challenges your way, but you are no longer shaken by what you cannot control. This is a freedom Stoicism offers. Not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within difficulty. Living stoically is not about becoming cold, detached, or harsh. On the contrary, it is a way of living with clarity, depth, and compassion. When you control your emotions, you do not hurt others out of anger. When you accept failure as part of growth, you do not lash out or collapse. When you focus only on what you can control, you do not waste energy on blame or complaint. You live more lightly, more clearly, and with greater responsibility. Applying Stoic thought to daily action is a lifelong challenge. There will be moments when you fail, when you react emotionally, when you do things you later regret. But the Stoic does not expect perfection. They only expect progress. Every mistake is a lesson. Every setback is a step toward greater strength. And it is in this quiet, persistent effort that the true power of Stoic thinking is revealed. Conclusion: standing firm in an unpredictable world. We live in a world of constant change. Each passing day brings new pressures, fresh information, endless comparisons, and heavy expectations. In such a landscape, maintaining a calm mind, a rational perspective, and an unwavering sense of purpose seems increasingly difficult. And yet, it is precisely in moments of chaos that Stoic philosophy shines most brightly, a guiding flame for those who seek a life of depth and meaning. Stoicism is not a cold, abstract, or outdated philosophy. On the contrary, it was forged in a fire of real human struggle, from pain, loss, and relentless adversity. The Stoics were not theorists removed from life. They were people who lived, fell, reflected, and rose again, leaving us a legacy of wisdom that is both timeless and profoundly relevant. The teachings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius are not relics of the past. They are tools we can use right now to master our emotions, sharpen our thinking, and act according to lasting values. From the first chapter to the last, we have walked through the essential pillars of Stoic thought. We have learned to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. We have practiced observing our emotions without becoming their slave. We have trained resilience, built discipline, and committed to reasoned action. Each chapter has been a step in the inner journey, a path where the greatest victory is not over others, but over the self. Stoicism does not promise an easy life, but it offers us a solid foundation to remain at peace even when the world outside is in turmoil. It helps us stay grounded when everything else is shaking. It does not stop the storm, but it teaches us how to anchor ourselves through it. And if you choose to apply this way of thinking every day, you will come to see that true success lies not in wealth, fame, or outward achievement, but in the inner freedom and calm you carry within. In the end, if you have found this writing helpful, consider showing your support, whether by sharing it with someone who may need a light on their journey, subscribing to stay connected, or simply reflecting on what you've read. Your small actions today may become the drop that fills someone else's cup of wisdom tomorrow. Thank you for reading all the way to the final words. Now, go live like a Stoic, with courage, clarity, and presence, in this beautifully uncertain world.